H5N1 is the world's worst bird flu outbreak in late 2021, and it's coming back. Recently, a Jiangsu woman was diagnosed with H5N1 bird flu after exposure to poultry. Beijing was already planning to liberate the country from zero-COVID policies before the monumental protests in late November. There is another wage crisis happening in China, and in this latest crisis, state agency employees are the victims. 2022 was a tough year for international journalists working in China. Harassment, privacy invasion, and delayed visa renewals are common. More details on this issue at the end of this episode. As reported by Vision Times, recently many parts of the world have had human-to-human H5N1, also known as bird flu or avian influenza outbreaks. After two H5N1 cases in Cambodia, a 53-year-old woman in Jiangsu was recently diagnosed with H5N1 bird flu. This case is the same virus that appeared in Cambodia a week ago. On March 1st, BNO News quoted the World Health Organization, WHO, as saying, a 53-year-old Jiangsu woman developed symptoms on January 31st after being exposed to poultry and tested positive for H5N1 in February. Her specific medical status has not been released. The report pointed out the genetic sequencing results in China showed a woman's infection was caused by the H5N1 virus strain 2.3.4.4b, which has spread around the world, raising concerns about possible threats to human health. On February 22nd, an 11-year-old girl in Cambodia died after being infected with H5N1. This is the first human H5N1 infection case found in Cambodia since 2014. According to the Cambodian Ministry of Health on February 22nd, the girl became sick on February 16th and was taken to the hospital in Phnom Penh. After showing symptoms such as high fever, cough, and sore throat, she was diagnosed with H5N1 on day 22 and died soon after. Her 49-year-old father was also confirmed to have H5N1 a few days later, but his condition was not serious. However, the cases in Cambodia were caused by the older H5N1 2.3.2.1c strain. After the Cambodia case, the WHO is reassessing the global risk posed by this avian influenza outbreak. Sylvie Briand, director of the WHO's Global Infection Hazard Preparedness Department, said on February 24th that they were in close contact with Cambodia about the case and were monitoring and testing those who had contact with the girl. She said the global spread of H5N1 is worrisome. H5N1 is the world's worst bird flu outbreak since late 2021, resulting in the culling of millions of poultry and large numbers of wild birds dying. The WHO said there have been more than 450 human bird flu cases worldwide since 2003, and the human mortality rate from H5N1 is over 50%. Reuters is now reporting that Beijing was already planning to liberate the country from zero-COVID policies before the monumental protests in late November. As the outlet reported on March 3rd, sources said reopening was already discussed at a private meeting in late October 2022 held by China's COVID task force, Wang Huning. They took into account the worst-case scenario of exposing the country to the virus and talked about different exit plans. The plan was to carry out a gradual dismantling of the restrictions by the end of 2022 and a full reopening this March. After the meeting, some restrictions were eased and infection cases started soaring. This, however, unnerved Chinese leader Xi Jinping. The People said that by mid-November, Xi told officials to unswervingly impose the controversial policy again. Some cities have followed suit. Li Qiang, China's new premier and Xi's trusted ally, at the time disagreed and directed local party officials to keep easing the rules. Xi Jinping was one of the governments that took the order and stopped testing its residents. Then came the mass protests across the country in late November. Public anger flared after a fire in a building under lockdown in Xinjiang province claimed at least 10 lives. At some point, demonstrators openly shouted for the resignation of Xi. Two sources said it was until then that the Chinese president allowed Li to expedite the process. The People said because of the protests, top Chinese officials decided that appeasing the angry public was more politically important than unleashing the virus. Li went a step further by scrapping the mass testing spree. This reflected China's abrupt dismantling of its zero-COVID policy on December 7th, which also ushered in a major outbreak. While bodies were piling up at crematoriums, Li told officials to ensure treatments and medication to important groups. There is another wage crisis happening in China. Recently, a spat of organizations and state agency employees have been protesting for their wages that are in arrears, surprising the Chinese people. Zhenjiang City Tax Department's employees protesting for wages. On March 1st, the Twitter account Li Jun posted a video. Zhenjiang City Tax Department, Jiangsu Province, held up a white paper protest against salary debt. This is really shocking. Why is the richest government office short of money? But what makes everyone happy is the white paper movement has been promoted by the tax department. Well done. In the video, 2 large plaques are hanging on a building. One says, Zhenjiang City Tax Department under the National Tax Administration, and the other says, Zhenjiang Runzhou District Tax Department under the National Tax Administration. Several people in uniform stood in front of the building, and about 40 protesters held up white paper with black letters. Some also held 2 white cloth banners with the words, Zhenjiang City Tax Department owes employees salaries, and Zhenjiang City Tax Department Chief Yu Hua does not act. The protesters just stood in silence. According to Vision Times, many netizens were surprised and said, "It's really one of a kind, collecting taxes but having no money to pay wages. It seems that the local financial problem is very serious. Local financial black hole is expanding. Looks like the Zhao family is really out of money. They can't even feed the servants." Another person replied, "All businesses are bankrupt. Where can they get the taxes?" According to public information, the Zhenjiang City Tax Department, which is directly under China's National Tax Administration, was established on July 5, 2018, marking the official merger of the former Zhenjiang National Tax Department and Zhenjiang Local Tax Department. Harbin Postal Company employees asking for salary. On March 1st, the Twitter account Your Happiness is the Sun in My World tweeted, China Post, son of the Chinese Communist Party, is also on the way to claim a salary. In the video, more than 10 uniformed employees are standing in front of a building. Behind them are 2 plaques titled Harbin Branch Company of China Post Corporation. In the cold weather, these people held up large banners and white background and black text that read, China Post owes wages without paying and maliciously cuts wages. God will not tolerate. They also chanted this slogan out loud. Many netizens rushed to comment on this issue. Harbin Post's regular state-owned enterprise really maliciously owes wages. If this continues, the pressure cooker will explode in a day or two. The Chinese government is really playing risky. The government has run out of money. Even if it has already been thrown abroad. Chinese businesses like this will make the people miserable. According to public information, China Post Corporation Limited, or China Post for short, is a state-owned enterprise operating China's official postal service. This is a 100% state-owned company invested by the Finance Ministry on behalf of the State Council. Previously, cases like civil servant salary cuts and being fined maliciously were exposed on the internet. Chen Pokong, a political commentator in the U.S., said in a video on his YouTube channel, it is understandable for farmers and workers to demand wages because they are considered at the bottom of society. After the end of zero COVID, the Dabei demanded wages, and now it's civil servants' turn. Moreover, they even raised white paper and joined the white paper revolution. Zhenjiang and Jiangsu are 2 developed economic areas. But the tax department really owes wages. Even the so-called stable job can't stand it. The Chinese government is really out of money. Fan Xiao, a political and economic observer, believes when other stabilizing departments, such as the police, are not paid, the Chinese Communist Party is about to collapse. According to an annual survey by the Foreign Correspondents Club of China, foreign journalists in China continue to suffer from various kinds of suppression. The report describes 2022 for journalists as another tough and draining year. The survey gathered journalists' feedback from news organizations in over 30 countries and regions. In 2022, 46% of respondents said they could not access certain places for health and safety reasons, though the journalists had met China's health standards. Another 47% said they had difficulties reporting about the pandemic situation due to the Chinese regime's surveillance and tracker app. Harassment and other suppressive measures are also their major concerns. 38% said at least one of their sources had experienced harassment, detention, being summoned for questioning by the government, or other unfavorable outcomes due to speaking with international journalists. 45% of the club's foreign journalists also reported their Chinese colleagues were intimidated. The number was 5% higher than that of 2021. Due to this reason, many journalists had to put off interviews with Chinese residents for fear of bringing trouble to interviewees. A Chinese rights lawyer had told Radio Free Asia that he had to turn down an interview for his safety. A Chinese activist was told to stay away from international journalists after she took part in a protest against cuts to medical insurance payouts. She told RFA, the police station had told me that they don't want me giving foreign media interviews. When foreign reporters contacted her for information, she signaled them that she was under surveillance by saying the euphemism, it was inconvenient. The activist added, I am under total surveillance, including the monitoring of all phone calls and internet activity. Besides being prevented from performing their work, foreign reporters often find themselves shadowed by Chinese police. A Beijing-based journalist said she was followed by unidentified personnel. Although she did not touch on sensitive topics, she said, "I don't know who they were, but they followed us the whole time, taking photos and videos of us in Wuhan, Xiamen, and other places." Visa renewal has also become uneasy for international journalists. The report stated, in at least one instance, an American reporter with a valid visa and press card had their residence permit revoked and was barred from re-entering China after they left the country for a routine trip, the club said in a statement on its website. They were eventually forced to relocate elsewhere after months of failed negotiations. According to the 2022 World Press Freedom Index, China ranked 175th out of 180 countries and regions.